There is a truth that rarely gets said out loud, but that millions of Americans are quietly terrified about. The retirement plan they have been counting on their entire working lives is not going to pay them what they think it will. Right now, the average Social Security retirement benefit in America is roughly $2,000 per month, or approximately $24,000 a year. The federal poverty line for a single adult is roughly $15,000 to $16,000 per year, which means that the retirement income tens of millions of Americans have spent their entire careers paying into will leave them living just barely above the poverty line, if they are lucky enough to collect it at all. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The Social Security Trust Fund, the reserve that backs those payments, is officially projected to run dry as early as 2033. That is not a rumor. That is not a political talking point. That is the conclusion of the Social Security Administration's own annual trustees report. If Congress does nothing before that deadline, benefits could be automatically cut by approximately 23% across the board. If you are a Gen Xer in your peak earning years right now, that is your retirement window, and the clock is ticking. Paul and Linda found all of this out the hard way. They had done everything they were supposed to do, worked hard, paid their taxes, dutifully contributed to Social Security for decades, and when they finally sat down and ran the real numbers, the results were alarming. They had been living with what I call the Social Security illusion, the comfortable but dangerous belief that Social Security would be enough. It was not even close. But here is the good news. Once Paul and Linda understood the truth, they took deliberate, specific action to make Social Security completely irrelevant to whether or not they could retire comfortably. And in this video, we are going to walk you through exactly what they did step by step. This is your wake-up call. Let's get into it. Welcome to Millionaire Thinking, where we are dedicated to helping you achieve, protect, and expand your financial freedom. Today, we are not going to tell you that everything is going to be fine, or that the government has it all figured out. We are going to give you the honest truth about Social Security, and then hand you a real, actionable plan for protecting your retirement, no matter what Washington decides to do. We are going to do it by following Paul and Linda every step of the way. Like so many Gen Xers who played by the rules their entire working lives, Paul and Linda had always assumed that Social Security would form the dependable base of their retirement income. Between them, they had logged more than 55 years in the American workforce. They had paid Social Security taxes on every single paycheck without ever missing a contribution. And like most Americans their age, they had simply never stopped to question whether it would actually be enough. Then came the Saturday morning retirement seminar. Paul had spotted a mailer for it on the kitchen counter a few weeks earlier, a free event at the local hotel put on by a financial planning firm. He almost tossed it. Linda convinced him to go. Sitting in that room, they listened as the presenter walked the audience through the real numbers behind Social Security, projected benefits, trust fund timelines, the effect of inflation on fixed income. One slide in particular hit them like cold water, a side-by-side comparison showing what the average Gen X couple could expect from Social Security versus what they would actually need to spend in retirement. They drove home mostly in silence. That evening, they sat down at the kitchen table and did something they had never done before. They pulled up their own My Social Security accounts at ssa.gov and looked at their actual projected benefits. The numbers staring back at them were smaller than they had imagined. And when they added those numbers up and compared them to what their household actually spent every year, the gap was significant, sobering, and impossible to ignore. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Paul stared at the screen. Linda set down her pen. They had done everything right. The degrees, the careers, the contributions, the decades of showing up. And somehow, without either of them ever noticing, the foundation of their retirement plan had quietly cracked beneath them. It was not anger they felt in that moment. It was something closer to grief. And then, almost immediately after, something that felt like resolve. This was the point where Paul and Linda decided to change their story. Instead of ignoring what they had found, or worse, simply hoping Congress would fix things in time, they decided to take complete control of their own retirement outcome. They stopped counting on a system they could not control and started building one they could. What follows is the exact step-by-step plan they used to turn Social Security from their retirement lifeline into a pleasant bonus. Chapter 1: Inspecting the Foundation, the Social Security Reality Check. Most people build their entire retirement plan the way some builders cut corners on a foundation. Everything looks solid on the surface until it is not. The first thing Paul and Linda had to do was get a true, honest assessment of what their Social Security retirement actually looked like on paper. Not what they hoped it would be, not what the brochures implied, the actual numbers clearly laid out in front of them. Here is how to do that yourself. Go to ssa.gov and create or log into your My Social Security account. Here, you will find your complete earnings history, every year you worked, every dollar of Social Security taxes you paid, and your projected benefit at different claiming ages. It takes about 10 minutes, and what you find may change the way you think about retirement entirely. What a lot of people do not realize is that when you claim Social Security makes an enormous permanent difference. Claim at 62, and you could receive up to 30% less than your full benefit, not just for a few years, but for the rest of your life. Wait until 70, and you receive up to 32% more. For Paul and Linda, that difference amounted to hundreds of dollars a month permanently, and over the course of a long retirement, that single decision would make a big difference in their retirement lifestyle. But here is the critical insight Paul and Linda arrived at. Even with a perfect Social Security claiming strategy, the projected income was still not enough to cover their retirement expenses comfortably. Optimizing Social Security was an important piece of the puzzle, but it was only one piece. The real work was building what I call their retirement income floor, the minimum guaranteed monthly income they needed to cover every essential expense, no matter what the stock market did, no matter what Congress decided, and no matter what happened to the broader economy. Social Security, even optimized, only partially built that floor. They needed to build the rest themselves, from the ground up. Chapter 2: The Cracks Are Spreading, Understanding the 2033 Crisis. Paul and Linda had heard vague warnings about Social Security's financial problems for years, but like most Americans, they had never actually looked at the details. When they finally did, what they found was both clarifying and sobering. Here's the reality in plain English. Social Security operates as a pay-as-you-go system. The payroll taxes collected from today's workers pay the benefits of today's retirees. For decades, more money was coming in than going out, and the surplus was saved in the Social Security Trust Fund. But America is getting older. Baby boomers are retiring in enormous numbers. Birth rates have fallen. The ratio of workers to retirees, which was more than 5 to 1 in 1960, has now dropped to less than 3 to 1 and is still falling. The math is simple and merciless. The system is paying out significantly more than it is taking in. According to the Social Security Administration's own 2025 Trustees Report, the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, the one that specifically pays retirement benefits, is projected to be depleted by 2033. At that point, if Congress has not acted, the program would only be able to pay approximately 77% of scheduled benefits. In plain terms, an automatic, across-the-board cut of roughly 23%, permanent and immediate. Will Congress fix it before then? Possibly. Politicians have proposed solutions, raising the full retirement age, adjusting cost of living calculations, means testing benefits for higher earners, increasing payroll taxes. But the reality is that every one of those options changes the deal in some way, and so far, there is no agreement in place to solve the problem. Paul and Linda's conclusion was clear. They could not build a retirement plan whose success depended entirely on a political outcome they had no control over. So instead of worrying about what Washington might do, they focused entirely on what they could do themselves, and that started with building their own retirement income floor, one pillar at a time. Chapter 3: Pouring New Concrete, Building Your Own Retirement Income Floor. Paul and Linda's approach to rebuilding their retirement was built around what I call the four pillars. Not one source of retirement income, not two, not three, but four distinct independent pillars, each one strong enough to contribute meaningfully to their retirement on its own if any of the others weakened or failed. Pillar 1. Optimize Social Security. Paul and Linda would not abandon Social Security. They would simply refuse to depend on it alone, and they would claim it at precisely the right time using the strategies we will cover in Chapter 5. Pillar 2. Tax-advantaged investment accounts. This is where the majority of their retirement wealth would be built. Paul and Linda made one firm, non-negotiable commitment. They would contribute as much as they possibly could to every tax-advantaged account available to them, and work steadily toward maximizing those contributions year after year. Here's what those limits look like for 2026. The standard 401k contribution limit is $24,500 per person. If you are 50 or older, you can add a catch-up contribution of $8,000 on top of that, for a combined total of $32,500. And if you happen to be between the ages of 60 and 63, there is a special super catch-up provision under the Secure 2.0 Act that allows up to $11,250 in additional contributions instead of the standard $8,000. On the IRA side, the 2026 limit is $7,500 per person, with an additional $1,100 catch-up available for those 50 and older. Now I want to be direct about something important. Maxing out every one of these accounts is the ideal goal, but it is not the only goal worth pursuing. If you cannot max them out right now, contributing anything, even a modest, consistent amount, is dramatically better than contributing nothing. The power of these accounts is not just the contribution limit. It is the tax advantage, the compounding growth, and the discipline of saving consistently over time. Start where you are. Increase your contributions whenever your income allows. Every dollar you put in today is working for your future self. The important thing is that you are actively building Pillar 2 at whatever pace your current financial situation makes possible. Pillar 3. Passive income streams. Paul and Linda recognize that the most financially secure retirees do not just draw down savings. They own assets that generate income without requiring their active participation. They began allocating a portion of their investment portfolio specifically to dividend-paying index funds and REITs, real estate investment trusts, designed to generate regular, predictable income without them ever having to sell a share or manage a property. Pillar 4. Strategic part-time income. This is the most underrated retirement pillar of all. Paul and Linda agreed that in the early years of retirement, before they claimed Social Security at 70, and while their investments continued to compound, they would each maintain a flexible, modest income stream from work they genuinely enjoyed. Linda would consult part-time in logistics. Paul would expand his CRM consulting practice, not because they had to, because the math was undeniable. Earning even $2,000 to $3,000 a month in early retirement could extend the life of their investment portfolio by a decade or more. Together, the four pillars gave Paul and Linda something that most pre-retirees never achieve: a retirement income plan that did not live or die based on any single decision, any single market outcome, or any single act of Congress. And as we are about to show you in Chapter 4, the tax strategies they used to protect and grow those pillars made the entire plan even more powerful than it already was. Before we move on to Chapter 4, where we are going to show you the tax strategies that most Americans do not even know exist, I want to take one quick moment. If this content is helping you think differently about your retirement, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Subscribing is free, and it ensures you never miss a guide like this one. Now, let's get back to Paul and Linda. Chapter 4. The Hidden Rooms. Tax Strategies that Turbocharge Your Retirement. Most Americans approach their retirement savings the same way they approach their taxes. Pay what you owe and move on without looking too closely. Paul and Linda used to be exactly the same way, but when they dug deeper into retirement planning, they discovered what I call the hidden rooms of the tax code. legal, entirely legitimate strategies that the IRS built into the system specifically to encourage retirement saving, but that the vast majority of Americans never find and never use. The single most powerful of these hidden rooms, especially for Gen Xers in their peak earning years, is the Roth conversion strategy. Here's how it works. Paul and Linda had spent decades building up significant balances in their traditional 401ks and IRAs. All of that money had gone in pre-tax, which felt great at the time, but every single dollar they pull out in retirement will be taxed as ordinary income. And here is the timing risk that most people never think about. If Congress raises tax rates in the future to help fund Social Security shortfall or to address the national debt, that money gets taxed at the higher future rate, not at today's rate. This is where the Roth conversion window becomes one of the most valuable and most underused retirement planning strategies available to everyday Americans. Here's why the timing matters so much. Under current tax law, required minimum distributions, RMDs, the mandatory annual withdrawals the IRS forces you to take from traditional retirement accounts, begin at age 73 for most Americans. However, if you were born in 1960 or later, which applies to Gen X, your RMD age is 75, not 73, thanks to the Secure 2.0 Act. That 2-year difference is meaningful because it gives Gen Xers an even wider Roth conversion window to work with. In practical terms, the Roth conversion window is the period between reduced income, whether from early retirement, a career transition, or a lower earning year, and the year your required minimum distributions kick in. During that window, many people find themselves temporarily in a lower tax bracket, which creates an ideal opportunity to convert a portion of their traditional accounts to Roth at a lower tax cost. You pay the tax today at a known and potentially lower rate so that every dollar in your Roth account can grow and be withdrawn completely tax-free in retirement. Paul and Linda identified their optimal conversion window and began systematically moving a portion of their traditional accounts to Roth each year. Not all at once, which could trigger a large tax bill, but deliberately and strategically, staying within a tax bracket that made the conversion cost-effective. When Paul first ran the numbers on what their Roth conversion window meant in real projected tax savings over their retirement, factoring in the growth, the tax-free withdrawals, and the protection against future rate increases, he had to do the math twice because the numbers seemed too good to be true. But it was true, and it was sitting there, available to them all along, inside a hidden room they had simply never known to look for. The result? A growing pool of completely tax-free retirement income that no future tax rate change could ever touch. The second hidden room Paul and Linda unlocked was the Health Savings Account, or HSA. For those with access to a high-deductible health plan through their employer, the HSA remains one of the most powerful tax-advantaged accounts available to working Americans. It is triple tax-advantaged. Contributions go in tax-free, the money grows tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses come out completely tax-free. After age 65, it also functions similarly to a traditional IRA. Money can be withdrawn for any purpose, with ordinary income tax applying to non-medical withdrawals, but with no early withdrawal penalty whatsoever. Paul and Linda stopped thinking of their HSA as a healthcare spending account and started treating it as their stealth retirement account, specifically designed to absorb the one expense category that terrifies most retirees more than any other: healthcare costs. Between consistently contributing to their tax-advantaged accounts, executing a disciplined Roth conversion strategy timed to their specific Gen X RMD window, and treating their HSA as a dedicated retirement investment account, Paul and Linda were making every dollar they earned work harder, not by taking on more risk, but by using the tax-advantaged tools that were already available to them, tools that are available to you too. Chapter 5: Locking It In, the Social Security Maximization Game. Here's the final piece of Paul and Linda's plan: and it is one that surprises most people. Even though they had built a retirement income structure that no longer depended on Social Security, they still planned to collect every dollar Social Security owed them, and they planned to collect it at precisely the right time. Here's the reality. If you have worked and paid into Social Security your entire career, you have earned those benefits, every single dollar. The goal is not to walk away from it. The goal is to collect it strategically, not a single day before the math clearly says you should. Paul and Linda identified three specific Social Security strategies that most Americans never hear about. Strategy 1, the delay premium. For every year you delay claiming Social Security past your full retirement age, up to age 70, your monthly benefit increases by approximately 8%. In an era of market uncertainty and low guaranteed returns, an automatic government-backed 8% annual benefit increase is an extraordinary guarantee. For a Gen X couple where one spouse delays to 70, that permanent monthly increase can amount to hundreds of additional dollars every month for the rest of their lives, and continues as a survivor benefit after one partner passes. Strategy 2, the bridge income plan. The obvious challenge with delaying Social Security until 70 is that you need income to live on in the meantime. Paul and Linda solved this with a precise bridge income plan. In the gap years between their planned retirement age and 70, they would draw strategically from their Roth IRA, tax-free, penalty-free, while allowing their Social Security benefit to grow at 8% per year. The math was clear. The higher lifetime Social Security income more than compensated for the Roth withdrawals, and because their RMDs did not begin until age 75, under the Secure 2.0 rules for their birth year, their traditional IRA balances had even more time to continue converting during the same window. Everything worked together, like interlocking gears, each one reinforcing the next. Strategy 3, spousal benefit optimization. For married couples, Social Security offers powerful spousal benefit options that are almost entirely overlooked. A spouse may be entitled to claim either their own earned benefit or up to 50% of their partner's benefit, whichever is higher. By coordinating their individual claiming ages deliberately, Paul and Linda ensured they were maximizing not just their separate benefits, but their combined household Social Security income, both while they were alive and as survivor benefits if one of them passed away first. Together, those three strategies, the delay premium, the bridge income plan, and spousal benefit optimization, represented a significant amount of additional lifetime Social Security income for Paul and Linda compared to the default approach most people take: claim as soon as possible and ask questions later. The full picture of their retirement, all four pillars working together, the tax strategies optimized and Social Security maximized, had finally clicked into place. It had taken time, discipline, and a willingness to face some uncomfortable truths, but it was done, and it was unshakable. That is not a windfall. That is not luck. That is money they paid into the system for decades, money they had already earned. They just had to know how to unlock it. Those are the 5 chapters of the plan that Paul and Linda used to completely transform their retirement outlook. From a fragile single-source dependency on a system they could not control, to a resilient strategy that no political decision, market crash, or economic shock can destroy. They ran the real numbers instead of the comfortable ones. They built 4 pillars of retirement income instead of 1. They unlocked the hidden rooms of the tax code and used their Gen X RMD timeline to their full advantage. And they collected every dollar of Social Security they had earned, at the smartest possible time, in the smartest possible way. The decisions they made, taken together, represent a difference of potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in their lifetime retirement income. Not from luck, not from a windfall, but from knowledge and deliberate action. That same knowledge is now yours. Social Security may be uncertain. The political system may be unpredictable. The economy may shift in ways none of us can foresee. But your retirement does not have to be any of those things, if you build it on a foundation strong enough to withstand all of them. So here is your action item for today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Go to ssa.gov, create or log into your My Social Security account, and pull up your projected benefit statement. Look at the actual numbers, compare them to what you actually spend every month. That honest reckoning, just like Paul and Linda's, is where every smart retirement plan begins. Start there. If this video provided you with real value today, if it changed the way you think about your retirement, or gave you even one idea you did not have before, please take a few seconds to hit the like button and subscribe to Millionaire Thinking, and share this video with someone you care about who is still counting on Social Security alone to carry their retirement. They deserve to know the truth too. Until next time, keep thinking like a millionaire and start building your foundation today. See you in the next video.